Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be photographing the Mnweni Cutback with all its spires and pinnacles, hopefully with some sunset light and hopefully with these amazing cumulus clouds that you can see behind me. We're just leaving our camp, which is near the Orange River source. It's a pretty idyllic spot and a good place to start our hike, but it also puts us in a good place for sunrise tomorrow morning at Rockeries Pass. So really looking forward to this evening because I actually haven't shot here in quite a number of years, so there's a decent chance that I'll get something new for my portfolio. So I hope you'll enjoy the video. Annette, you're on camera.
I know. You got me.
Not interested, Eamon? Every time I'm in the Drakensberg, I see something totally exceptional, and this is one of those times. The light here is as good as it could possibly get, looking towards the Inani Pinnacles where we were this morning, but on the opposite side of them. And what makes this light setup particularly special is that we're in the shadow of quite a dark cloud at the moment, so the air is incredibly clear between us and those pinnacles, and that's what makes those sun rays outrageously well defined. It really is something to see. I mean, even with the naked eye, it looks totally fantastical, and this is going to make a pretty special photo, of course, carried entirely by the conditions, but wow, what a scene that is. One thing I'm not going to panic about here is blowing the highlights, because it might be that that creates the best image, the most natural impression of the light filtering over the top of the ridges. And so I am choosing some tighter photos, leaving out a lot of the sky, leaving out those clouds, because I think that that contrast might be distracting, and obviously the focus needs to be on all those sun rays. And what an incredible experience that was. Absolutely biblical light, and most of the images I shot here were in this portrait format, and there's lots to enjoy. This is a 50 megapixel file, so there's plenty of detail there, particularly this pool of light down at the bottom of the valley there. This is the Mnweni Pass, which I've walked down a couple of times before. And then if we pan up, there is obviously the star of the show, these rays of light coming through the Mnweni Pinnacles. And of course, that blown highlight at the top, which gives the image a really natural luminosity, and I think was a really good choice in this case. But just to compare, I did shoot some exposure brackets, so here is a version with those highlights recovered, and some people may prefer this, though I certainly don't. It doesn't feel quite as natural to me, and it feels a little flatter too. The sun rays themselves are slightly less spectacular, but I also can't hold them as bright because it wouldn't work as well with the sky. So some really good reasons for blowing out those highlights. But what I would say is that this works beautifully as a black and white conversion. So there is that argument to be made for retaining those highlight details and recovering them in post, because the black and white is that bit better, and this does work very well as a black and white. And finally, I thought I'd show you a landscape frame, and I kind of wished that I'd shot a few more landscape format images as the light was changing, because by this point it was starting to fade, as you can see. And I do think this is very effective. The sides of the cliffs hem in the view, but they give a sense of grandeur and scale and wildness. I don't know, it's hard to explain. So whilst the portrait frame is still probably the stronger of the two, I think it's a slightly more refined way of shooting the view. I certainly wish I had more alternatives of this landscape format as well. And here is a video taken by Adam Gibbs of me standing on this promontory taking the photos. In fact, I've sped this up a few times so that you can see the light moving as well. But what an amazing experience that was. And just like that, the light is gone. So we're going to move on to a different spot just further up the hill. But what a start to the shoot. I mean, there's no way we're going to top that. Just not a chance in hell. One of the most majestic scenes I've seen here in the Drakensberg. Eamon, did you get it?
Yeah, I hope so. I think that was, really absolutely outstanding.
Feel like I've almost got a shot here. Again, a portrait frame with these tufts of grass and potentially leaving the sky out completely to create a more even tonal balance. I just wish there was a tuft of grass somewhere here just to fill in that part of the foreground and create a bit more balance, but I'll give it a little go and see how it turns out. So here's the original file, and to be honest, I wished I'd spent more time taking this photo because a focus bracket was necessary, but I was shooting handheld because I was unconvinced by the image and I didn't do a good job of it, so there's some out of focus areas which I won't show you to spare my blushes. But the composition here didn't really work for me at the time, and what I hadn't considered is just what the crop would do for this. So you can see I'm cropping through that bottom tuft of grass, and for some reason that makes the image feel a lot more balanced to me, so it works better compositionally, and of course the editing has also helped to cut through some of that haze in the background to create an image that I actually quite like. So there's a lesson there perhaps to spend a little bit more time on my technique, even with shots that I don't think are going to make the grade, because occasionally they will.
You're actually moving or doing something rather than just standing there.
Even without the light, I think this is pretty cool. Maybe some more work needed on that foreground, but looking into the Drakensberg's Grand Canyon here. I did hunt around the edge here for some interesting foregrounds, but as you can see, I didn't come up with much. So as much as I love this background, the foreground just feels a little bit too busy, and also the shot is generally too flat. And I'm sure if I came back with nicer lighting, I could actually find something quite interesting up here or make more of a less interesting foreground. But without any light on that background, it doesn't really work. Doesn't look like we're going to have more sunlight, though you never know. But this view is nice, even in the flat light, but maybe you need a slightly more interesting composition than just this straight up view. Unfortunately, we have that in the form of these dead bushes here in the foreground. So I've just moved over to let Annette have a go, but I think it's quite an interesting take on the view anyway. Here you can see me maneuvering the camera into position to make that foreground bigger and align it more with the backdrop. Usually I do this just visually and use my hands to frame the scene before putting the camera in that position, but I did it with the camera here so you could see my process. But you'll also notice that in this final image I've plucked those grasses that were in the foreground in the video. I very rarely do that, but this did need a little bit of gardening to make the most of what is a pretty fascinating foreground. Fires come through this area maybe once every year or every 2 years, so that's what's killed these helichrysum bushes and left these tendril-like, spider-like structures in the foreground, which I think are really fascinating and adds so much to this image. And it does have a pretty great backdrop too. Again, I'd love some side light, but you can't have it all, and I guess that does give me an excuse to come back. But if I don't, I'm very pleased to have captured this image on the same evening as such a fantastical light show. It's nice to have something completely different like this. Well, I think we all knew we'd used up our luck when we had that amazing light show about an hour ago, so it's no great surprise that we're clouded up now and there's definitely going to be no further light for the rest of today. But it has obviously been a brilliant afternoon shoot, and I hope you've enjoyed this video too. If you have, if you'd like to have an experience like this yourself, then please do check out my website. I run Drakensberg tours like this every single year, and if you just want to enjoy videos on my channel, then please do click that subscribe button and leave me a comment below.